Hello, this is cjhoyle, and welcome to day one of my solo canoeing adventure on the Severn River. So back in the late summer of 2020, I did a solo canoe trip on the Trent-Severn Waterway, which was an absolute blast. This trip included a 9-day segment from Lake Simcoe to Rice Lake, followed by a 5-day segment from Hastings to Presqu'île. During these two segments, I had the opportunity to visit all 40 locks along this part of the system. However, the Trent-Severn Waterway is actually designed to carry watercraft from Lake Ontario all the way to Georgian Bay, so there's another segment up here which includes 4 more locks, which I'm still really interested to explore. This segment follows the route of the Severn River, which flows from the north end of Lake Couchiching into Georgian Bay at Port Severn. The distance from Washago to Port Severn is approximately 53 kilometers, which should make it a good distance for a 2-day weekend canoe trip. So today is Saturday, July the 10th, 2021, and thanks to a ride from my dad, me and the family canoe have been transported to Washago so I can begin this mini solo weekend trip. So the time is about 8:45, and starting from here at the Washago dock at the north end of Lake Couchiching, I've got the canoe all loaded up with my stuff and ready for me to begin 2 days of paddling on the Severn River. So it's a beautifully calm day here on Lake Couchiching with virtually no wind, but I'm not going to be paddling across Couchiching today. I'm actually going to be turning to the right here and going between those rocks over there, which will take me into the canal, which will lead me towards Port Severn. So here I've reached the beginning of the canal, and I'll be paddling underneath of this bridge here, which is Highway 11. Well, I really couldn't have got much luckier than this for weather. As I said before, there's virtually no wind today, and the temperature is currently about 20 degrees Celsius and not a cloud in the sky. So up to this point I've seen a couple small fishing boats, but this here is the first larger boat that I've seen of the morning. So up ahead I've got another bridge to paddle underneath of, and this one's a railway swing bridge for the CN railway line. I'm guessing this bridge is probably original to this portion of the canal, which makes it more than 100 years old, and I assume it still operates because this is still an active railway line and it would need to be able to pivot out of the way for larger boats to be able to pass underneath of it. So there are no cottages along this portion of the waterway, which makes it feel very secluded and quiet. So the time is now 9:30 and I've paddled a little bit more than 3 kilometers and I've just about reached Lock 42 Couchiching, which is the first of 2 locks that I'll be passing through today. I can see a couple people have some tents pitched here who were presumably camping here last night, which is what I'm planning on doing when I get to the next lock later today. Well, you can see here I'm getting the green light to head on inside the lock. So you can see back behind me there, they're closing the lock gates for me and this other boat, which are heading down. All right, so here we're starting to go down as they're removing water from this lock chamber. So as you can see, we've reached the bottom and here come those big gates. As you can see, this is quite a large lock. So after coming through the lock, I tied up the canoe here because before I go any further, I'm going to make a quick stop and enjoy a nice serving of overnight oats. All right, so here I am back in the water and ready to continue paddling down the Severn River. So not far past the lock station, there's a T, and that's where the Trent-Severn Waterway's canal meets up with the natural path of the Severn River, which actually flows from over that way. But I'm going to be heading downstream in this direction here, and you can see that most of the sides of the river are lined with privately owned cottages. Can hear the train over there in the distance. Over there to my left I can see the tracks of the CN railway, which is the one that I went underneath of under that bridge earlier today, and I believe later in the day I'll be going underneath another bridge for that same railway. So as you can see from this sign here, we're going to be approaching another swing bridge, and to get them to swing it out of the way I would need to sound my horn 3 times, but my canoe doesn't have a horn, so I guess I'll have to paddle underneath of the bridge with it not open. So you can see that swing bridge, and in the foreground here you can also see some current on the river here. I was told by the member of the lock staff that I spoke with back at Lock 42 that the water levels in Lake Couchiching are pretty high right now, which means they're letting a lot of water through the system, which means there should be a nice amount of current to help me get to my destination. According to the sign here, this is Hamlet Bridge 57. This is one of many signs that I've seen that the water is higher level than usual. So I've now paddled about 10 kilometers, and up ahead you can see this is where the Severn River opens up into a lake called Sparrow Lake. Here's a mother mallard duck with her ducklings following behind. So since the lake seems to be pretty calm today, rather than sort of following along the shorelines here, I'm just going to head straight across and take the most direct route to continue following the waterway. So here I've paddled about halfway across Sparrow Lake. It's not a particularly big lake, but it is the biggest lake that I'll be paddling across in my journey today. So the time is now 12 noon, and I've paddled just over 12 kilometers, and I've just about reached the end of Sparrow Lake, where it narrows back into a river again. There's a little houseboat over there. That's the first of those that I've seen on this trip. So here you can see things have narrowed back down into a river again. So I paddled about 15.5 kilometers so far, and the time is around 12:45, so I think I'm going to stop and have a break for some lunch. I believe all the land around here is privately owned, so I think I'll just pull the canoe over here to the shade and I'll eat my lunch inside the canoe. Nothing too special on the menu today, just raw vegetables, an egg salad sandwich, and water to drink. Alright, so I'm finished my lunch now and ready to get back in there and keep on paddling. In retrospect, this probably wasn't the best place to stop because there are quite a few boats coming up and down here, and each time one passed, it brought with it some waves, which made this a pretty bumpy place to be sitting in the canoe. Despite seeing plenty of boats today, that's the first other canoe that I've seen on the water. So it's now 2 p.m. and I've traveled almost 19 kilometers, and you can see things are getting narrow again up ahead. As things get narrow again, you can also see evidence of the current flow that's pulling me towards my destination. So I've now paddled 21 kilometers, and straight ahead there's an island, and the waterway is signed to go on that side of the island, but I've been seeing an awful lot of boats on the water today, so I think I'll go the other side, which should hopefully be a little bit calmer with fewer boats. And once again, in this spot where the river gets narrow, you can see definitely a flow of current, and I've got this whole channel here to myself, so I definitely think I made the right decision coming the long way around this island. When I was planning this trip, I had the option of doing it either in the upstream direction or the downstream direction, and the downstream direction seemed like an obviously better choice, so that's what I picked. Although I really didn't think it would actually make that much of a difference because of the dams that are on the river and the fact that, you know, it kind of has formed some lakes along the way, which are relatively deep and, you know, quite wide in sections. But in these narrow sections, I really do feel if I had been doing it in the opposite direction, it really could be fairly challenging paddling up some of these parts. So now I've paddled all the way around that island. I'm not sure what the island is called, but the main channel of the river over there on that side of the island is called McDonald's Cut. And from now I'm going to be turning to the left, and I'll paddle over that way where I'll go underneath of a bridge, which is over there in the distance. So this bridge here carries the CN rail line, the same one that I crossed, which had the swing bridge earlier. And this spot on the river here is known as the Hydro Glen. And definitely some rapids here. Not all of those were made from those boats that just passed me. And back behind me you can see there's a train passing over top of that bridge. Like I said earlier, I'm very glad to be paddling this in this direction as opposed to coming upstream along this. So the river's widened back up again, and that means no more current to help me go along, but that's okay. I'm pretty close to my destination for the day. This portion of the river doesn't seem to have nearly as many cottages as some of the other places where I was paddling earlier. Over there's a guy wake surfing. Notice how he's not holding on to any rope. He's simply using the wake of the boat to propel himself and move forwards. So I've now paddled about 25.5 kilometers and the time is 3:45. I believe the lock station that I'm heading for, lock number 43, Swift Rapids, should be just around that corner up ahead. And there's my first look at the Swift Rapids Lockstation and dam. So there you can see the dam over there towards the left side, which must be pulling a lot of water today, so I'll be sure to stay over here to the right as I work my way into the lock station. This lock station looks like a pretty busy place today. So I parked the canoe here and I've walked around a little bit, and I've also purchased a camping permit, and my plan is to camp down at the bottom of this lock. So I'm going to get back in the canoe and I'm going to take the lock down to the bottom. Alright, so I'm just going to wait here on the blue line until it's my turn to go inside the lock. So Swift Rapids Lock 43 is what they call a giant lock. It has a lift of 14.3 meters, but it's just a regular flood lock, which makes it the largest of its type on the Trent-Severn Waterway. When the Trent-Severn Waterway first opened, at this location they had a marine railway instead of a lock, but in 1965 they replaced it with this giant lock. So you can see they're opening up the lock gates, and there's a load of boats inside that lock, which are getting unloaded here. Oh, there's my green light so I can paddle inside. So here I am, loaded inside the lock. So here they started to empty some of the water out of the lock. It should take quite a while to get down, considering we have 14.3 meters to go. So we've descended pretty far, but still should be quite a bit further to go. Still going further down. Look how far up that door goes. Very impressive. And there it opens. Alright, so I'm out of the lock, and over here on the right side, at the bottom of the lock, is where I'm going to be camping. And the reason why I decided to camp down here at the bottom, rather than the nice big grassy area that they have up at the top, is because I want to leave tomorrow morning before the lock opens at 9 a.m. Alright, so down here at the bottom of the lock, I've got the canoe out of the water over there, and I've got all my gear from it unloaded onto that picnic bench there. And my plan is that I'm hoping I'll be able to fit my tent on that small little grassy area right there. So just like I had hoped, that tent ended up fitting in that spot quite perfectly, almost like it was made for there. So I've got everything set up now, all my gear organized. Now I'm going to take a break and have some dinner. So on the menu for dinner tonight, I've got one of my new favorite salad kits, Buffalo Ranch, which I'm going to eat inside this container, and I may also have an apple and some granola bars as well, depending on how hungry I am. And of course, water to drink. That's quite the yacht there. Alright, so now that I'm done my dinner, I'm going to walk around a little bit and explore. So here's a look at the big lock from the bottom, looking up. And also a friendly reminder of a few things to be cautious of while you're here. Most of southern Ontario does not have poisonous snakes, but the Georgian Bay area is home to the Massasauga rattlesnake, which is venomous. To get up to the top of the lock from here, there's this long staircase which will take you up, and it even goes up further, up to that control tower where the lockmaster sits. And here we are up at the top of the stairs, and you can see that they're unloading some boats from the lock here. And from up here you can really get a sense of how deep this lock goes down. 14.3 meters is a long way down. In order to be able to see the boats that are waiting at the top and at the bottom, that's what this control tower is up here. And down there at the bottom you can see my tent nestled there in the grass. Over here on the other side of the lock you can see a lot of white water, and that's the water that's being discharged from the dam over there. So from up here you can see all that water coming out of the dam over there. And there's also this building right here, which is a hydroelectric generating station, which has a nameplate capacity of 7.8 megawatts. And on a day like today when there's so much water going through, I have a feeling it would be running at full capacity. So they've got that lock emptied out now, and there's another boat here that's being loaded on. Here you can see that they're starting to close the gates. So with that boat loaded inside, you can see that they've already started to drop the water down. So a few minutes have passed, and you can see that the water from this lock has disappeared, and that boat is way down there. There's also another set of stairs on the other side of the lock, which takes you down to the bottom on this side. Given that most of this is a ramp as opposed to the switchback stairs on the other side, this set of stairs is much more suitable for people that want to portage their canoe as opposed to taking them through the locks. So that boat that was in there before is now left, and you can see that they're loading another group of watercraft into there. So from down here you can get a pretty good look at the lock as a whole, and over this way at the dam. So here I am up at the top of the dam, looking back on what I paddled earlier today and looking forward to where I'm going to be paddling tomorrow. So unlike other Trent-Severn Waterway lock stations that I've camped at in the past, this one doesn't have any small towns or villages anywhere near it. It's very remote, and in fact the road to get here really isn't even publicly accessible. It's really only to be used by staff members. Because of the remoteness of this lock station, they also don't have any garbage collection here. The time is now about 6:45, and I can see the lock staff are starting to get things closed up for the night. And there the lock staff head home. So the time is now 8:20 p.m. and the sun will soon be setting below the tree line over there. So in preparation for tomorrow, I'm going to make my overnight oats using my campsite overnight oats recipe, of which I have a YouTube video about. So I just add my dry ingredients and a little bit of clean drinking water to it. And by breakfast time tomorrow, these ingredients will have transformed into a delicious and energizing bowl of oatmeal. So that will wrap things up for the first day of this 2-day weekend trip. Today I paddled the canoe a total distance of just over 27 kilometers, and it was a pretty good day out on the water. I will say that I found the distance seemed to take a really long time, and probably that's mostly because this is my first time being in a canoe since last September. So, not really used to paddling any distance at all, and I'm starting with a fairly long distance to start with. I have done a fair bit of kayaking already this year, but canoeing and kayaking really aren't quite the same activity. I guess they use different muscles, and they certainly use different parts of the hand, and I was finding fairly early on that my hands were kind of starting to get sore, so that probably contributed to it, but I think tomorrow should be fine. I'm not too worried about blisters or anything like that. But yeah, looking forward to tomorrow as I continue paddling the rest of the way down the Severn River to lock number 45, Port Severn. My paddling distance for tomorrow should be pretty similar to what I paddled today, but since I'm already here on the water, I should be able to get a much earlier start and hopefully arrive at my destination earlier. Along the way tomorrow, I'll be going through 2 locks, including one lock, which isn't actually a lock, it's actually a marine railway, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed joining me on part 1 of this 2-day trip. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.